It is the Awesemo, call it the Yahoo strategy show for Monday Night Football. And, a pretty good game, Sunday Night Football game. That was a little more competitive than I think we thought. I think most people thought the game between the Rams and the Bears would overall be pretty boring with Andy Dalton at quarterback, but ended up delivering. And we've got a lot of more fun Yahoo contests today. Eric, how are you? Just kind of overview thoughts. How are you feeling about the Yahoo contest tonight?
Yeah, I feel good about it because I get to be alongside you, who I believe took down or had the share of the takedown last night for the Rams and Bears game. So maybe boring game to some, but definitely not to you. Congratulations, dude.
Well, also I was actually not watching the game. I was playing I was playing Pokemon with my brother, and then I looked at my phone. I was like, "Oh, I'm doing well in DFS." And then I watched the fourth quarter of the game. But yeah, it was good. It was definitely a good contest. And the other thing too is there was some overlay, which is all the more reason. Also, you guys should be signing up over at Yahoo Daily Fantasy because there are massive contests today. There's a $200,000 NFL single game baller contest. There's a pretty good chance there's going to be overlay there. So you should be signing up over at Yahoo. And the best way to do it, there is a link below in the description. Click on that link. And if you sign up through that and you're a new user, you'll get 2 months of free Awesemo Plus Platinum. That is, if you're a new user to Yahoo, sign up using the link below, get access to the tools that we have for Yahoo, which, by the way, we have everything that you need to win over on Yahoo, right over at awesemo.com. We've got projections and all that good stuff that'll help you build the best lineups possible over on Yahoo. So click on that link below if you're new to Yahoo, and take advantage of the tools we have on the site. But let's talk about some of the game for today. And I think the place we need to start is at the quarterback position with Lamar Jackson. And there's not going to really be any controversy here. He's a good play. We're both going to agree with that. We haven't even talked about this. I already know you think he's a good play. The question becomes, though, how much exposure do you want to get to Lamar Jackson? Is he an all-in play for you, or are you willing to make some lineups without him?
I'm all in on him. There's no way I'm not going to have a lineup, and I'm probably not even going to have a lineup where he's not in the superstar over on Yahoo today. I don't know what his rostership will be. I'm not sure how many people are going to be going his direction, but I got to feel as though a guy who has back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons, who just lost his number 1 and number 2 running backs in J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, is going to get a lot of rushing opportunity in this game in the play action. And there's going to be a lot of opportunities for him throwing the ball. There was some massive regression in 2020 for him. 36 touchdowns, 6 interceptions in 2019. Absolutely outrageous. QBR around 83. That regressed a little bit. 26 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Still very, very serviceable. Definitely above replacement from a quarterback perspective. But I still think that there's a massive amount of upside in his legs that cannot be ignored. And I'm probably not going to make any lineups on Yahoo where he's not superstar.
Yeah, I'm willing to make ones that don't have Met superstar, but just lineups in general. He's in all of them for me. And the other thing to consider too here is the salary isn't that restrictive tonight for a couple of reasons. Number one, Derek Carr, the quarterback on the other side of the game, only $25. So there isn't much of a salary there. The other thing also, Josh Jacobs is $24. He might not be playing. So we're going to be talking about the Raiders running back situation in a second. But that's something else that makes it where if Jacobs doesn't play, we're really limiting the amount of people that we have to spend our salary on. And the other thing also is that due to all those running back injuries with the Ravens, Tyson Williams is going to be starting at running back for Baltimore. He's $10, the flat minimum. So with that in mind, there's a lot of places to save salaries, not that many places to spend up. That just makes Lamar Jackson a no-brainer play to me. He's going to be in all my lineups. He's not going to be in the superstar spot in all my lineups, but he is going to be in all my lineups in one spot or the other. One thing that does concern me a little bit is just with dupes. If I'm building lineups that only have Lamar Jackson as the superstar, I just don't know what the chances of that being a lineup that could take down a solo first place finish, which, it's always hard to do on a one game contest. But in the idea of trying to make myself as different as possible, I think maybe going to somebody like Derek Carr in the superstar in some of my lineups also makes sense. Now with Derek Carr, if you look at our projections that we have over on awesemo.com, there's tiers here. Lamar Jackson projects for 23.97 fantasy points, by far the most of anybody in this game. Second is Derek Carr at 17.6. Then there's a drop off to get to Darren Waller, 12.14. But I still think that Derek Carr is a viable superstar choice. But you seem to be kind of all wanting to get to Lamar Jackson's superstar. Is just there too big of a projection gap for you to consider Carr there at all?
Yeah, I think it is exactly that. I think it's just from a projection standpoint. I don't know how many times you talk about this rushing floor for Lamar, and on the other side, I'm not superimposed PFF. I mean, they're kind of the Raiders and Ravens are both right around number 10. So I'm not like looking at this being something where either defense is going to be imposing on the other one. I think both offenses should be able to do what they want to do in this spot. And Derek Carr, as good as what he is, I think he's a very efficient quarterback. I think he's definitely better than what people probably think that he is, and is going to get the ball in a lot of opportunities to get the ball into Darren Waller's hands. Not really a bona fide wide receiver too, and we'll get to some of those discussions here, or a second pass catching option, should I say. I mean, Derek Carr, we've seen him eviscerate in some big spots, and like Kansas City completely went nuts. And you're talking about one or two opportunities to kind of see him outperform on the other side, Lamar Jackson, in this kind of a spot. I mean, what would you set the line at in terms of number of times that Lamar Jackson is going to outproduce Derek Carr, that Derek Carr would beat him? I mean, I would put it at like 4-1, and I don't see Lamar Jackson being 75% in the superstar and Derek Carr being 25%. So for me, I just feel like an all-in superstar for Lamar Jackson feels like the right way to go. And I think that because you do have the $10 down there going to Tyson Williams, that you can kind of leave some salary on the table and it won't be duped that frequently.
Yeah, so I'm just going to look at some of the projections we have. So here's at least what we have in terms of top score. We have a 56.3% chance for Lamar Jackson to rack up the most fantasy points on the slate, and 15.6% for Derek Carr. So, somewhere in the neighborhood of like a 4-1 Lamar Jackson favorite over Derek Carr makes sense. But then we're just kind of trying to consider, how much more popular is Lamar Jackson going to be in that 1.5x spot. And it's at least to the point where I'm willing to get some lineups that have Derek Carr in them, just because, like I said, I think it could be hard to go with a solo first if you do have Lamar Jackson there. But without a doubt, I think these are the two players to have the most exposure to. I think they're the two best overall plays on the slate. And once again, they're not that difficult to fit in, because as we transition over to the running back position, Tyson Williams is only $10. And I guess the only thing to really talk about here is, how confident are you that he is going to be the go-to running back for Baltimore?
I'm pretty confident. And this is coming from a guy yesterday who was trying to make a case for Sony Michel, got completely burned, eviscerated, woke up to, 50 million messages from people who were upset. And for me, it was kind of reading the tea leaves of what I thought they were going to do. I think it's something similar here. I think there's going to be a number of packages where Latavius Murray or Le'Veon Bell, if he ends up getting activated, I don't even know who's going to be the backfield there. I'm assuming it's not going to be Devonta Freeman. He got added to the practice squad. I don't think he's going to get called up here in this spot, but Le'Veon Bell, Latavius Murray, I don't see them getting a ton of action here in the 5 days that they've been on this Baltimore squad. So I think that it is going to be Tyson Williams. It sounds like the coach speak, the rhetoric around him is that they do like him. He's a kid who, he had another year there at BYU, didn't get drafted. Seems like he's still a pretty good runner, and we'll find out a little bit tonight, but he's going to get a bulk of this. He's been in the offense here for the entire offseason coming into this year. I got to imagine he knows the playbook more. I think there is some sync there with Lamar Jackson just from what they've talked about. So I'm looking at him as being, at least 65% of the carries here. And at $10, there's basically no opportunity cost there.
Yeah, and the other thing too is we don't have other running backs to consider on Yahoo, because we don't have Le'Veon Bell is in the player pool. Latavius Murray. It's just Tyson Williams is the only available running back, because J.K. Dobbins, he's in there. He's out for the season. Gus Edwards, he's in there. He's out for the season. Same goes for Justice Hill. So nobody else we could even consider from Baltimore. And I think already right off the bat, we've gotten to the two top payoff options being Derek Carr and Lamar Jackson, and then Tyson Williams being the best value play. So there we go. The first three players we mentioned already the top plays right off the board. Although with that said, this could change a little bit for me with Tyson Williams, depending on the status of Josh Jacobs. Jacobs was considered likely to play all week. I think he was dealing with, it was a shoulder injury in the offseason. But then we find out yesterday, downgraded to questionable due to an illness. His status is up in the air. I have not seen an update yet today on whether he's going to play or not. So let's walk through a couple scenarios here. First, if he plays, what do you make of him? Number two, if he's out, who do you think benefits the most?
If he plays, I'm going to just treat him as such and go full steam ahead there. $24. He's $1 less than Derek Carr. I'm still going to be projecting Derek Carr more. I think that the number of lineups that kind of work to go to a cheaper dude on the end for the Vegas Raiders. I think that kind of is the build that is something I kind of lean on a little bit more here, but it is going to become kind of cost prohibitive to be able to play Jacobs and Carr together there. In terms of how much the field is going to be going to these guys, what their roster ship's going to be, I'm not exactly sure, but I got to assume Josh Jacobs with the Q tag next to him is going to come in a lot lower rostered. So therefore, I do like going to Jacobs a lot, and I will roster him a lot in the event that he does play. And if he doesn't play, that was kind of the second part of your question. I mean, doesn't Kenyon Drake kind of become the de facto auto plug and play just about everywhere? From what it looks like, Jalen Richard is also on the injured reserve here. I don't know how long ago. Yeah, that was last week was the update there. So we'd said he's going to be sidelined at least 3 games in this spot. You start to get Peyton Barber, who could get activated. He got signed by the team. You could be looking at some of that, but Kenyon Drake's been in-house there for a while. He would automatically become, I don't know, probably my favorite play from the Raiders side in the event that Josh Jacobs is out. We'll wait on that news, but I'm not going to overreact to anything right now.
Yeah, and the other thing too with me is actually if Jacobs ends up not playing, I prefer Kenyon Drake to Tyson Williams. Williams is $5 cheaper, but even with that said, I prefer Drake just because he has the backfield to himself. Whereas with Williams, he could be competing for red zone touches with Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson could be carrying the ball 15 times this game, whereas Kenyon Drake is just going to be getting all of the carries out of the backfield for Las Vegas. But once again, that's under the assumption that if there was a situation where Jacobs didn't play, then they were going to need more information on. And also, it's all going to be on the YouTube channel throughout the day. And subscribe to the channel, like this video. Later on, we're going to have all NFL live before lock, before the Monday Night Football game. And then we should really know for sure whether Jacobs is going to be in or out, or if he's going to be limited or anything along those lines. But let's transition over to the wide receivers now. And it's tough to find receivers to like from the Baltimore side. The reason being is because Lamar Jackson doesn't really throw the ball all that much. And even when he does, sometimes a little erratic, a little inaccurate. It's not crazy to see a game where Lamar Jackson might have 130 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns and then throw for like 90 yards and a touchdown. So I think that without a doubt, the highest upside receiver is Marquise Brown here, but I don't know how much I trust these receivers. So which ones are you gravitating towards?
So he's going to be the one I think that gets the most attention out of the entire receiving corps. He's got the name recognition. We've been trying to make him a thing forever. It is extremely frustrating. There were only 2 games throughout the entire season last year. We went over 20 on Yahoo. So, I mean, that's a pretty low number. Again, we're talking about a 1-game sample. If he goes for 15, you're probably going to need him in any kind of event. So I don't want to overstate that, but Sammy Watkins is definitely the X factor kind of thrown into the middle of this offense. I think he becomes the de facto number 2. Duvernay, a guy that had some upside at times just in terms of like an individual catch or two in some kind of showdown formats, but I don't think we need to be going too crazy here. I mean, for me, wide receiver is pretty clear cut where I'm going to be going to Brown, Watkins from the Baltimore side. And I think that that's about it, but I might be trying to get to a little bit more Watkins if the field is going to be going to Brown. How about yourself?
It's going to be Hollywood Brown for me. If you just look at our projections, we have him a lot higher right now. And also the price points are similar between the two. $15 for Marquise Brown, $13 for Sammy Watkins. We have Watkins projected for 6.5 fantasy points compared to 9.5 for Hollywood. So I don't think the cost is going to be that prohibitive for this particular slate. To me right now in the crunch that I've run, he's popping up in more significant amount of my lineups. I also don't mind taking a flyer on Hollywood Brown as the superstar play because, like you said, he only had 2 big games last year. However, they were significantly big games, and he has big play upside. So if you do look also at our projections today, we have Brown. Let's see, what are his odds of being the top scoring? I mean, we have him with a 1.1% chance of being the top scoring player on the slate. It's not significant, but it's a number that I don't think a lot of people are going to be getting to him in any kind of real way. So mixing him into some lineups, looking for that upside and hoping that maybe he breaks off, that 80-yard catch and run for a touchdown, or maybe there's an end around where he brings it to the house. I think that he's the highest upside receiver of anybody in this game.
All right. I think that's probably a fair assessment. I mean, we're going to talk about tight ends here in a second. I think I'd prefer both of them to any of the wide receivers that exist on the board. But in the event that you're going to a wide receiver, I'm not disagreeing that Marquise Brown is probably the highest upside guy. For me, it comes down to a 1-game sample. I think people are going to be clicking on his name far more than they're going to be clicking on Watkins. And, as much as we do project them, it's not like miles apart. As I'm looking at it, it's within 3 fantasy points that we have Sammy Watkins and Brown. And I think that just the amount of rostership that's going to go in that direction, I might be trying to get myself a little bit more towards the Watkins side. Not anything substantial, but that's just for me thinking if I have a lot of Lamar Jackson and Superstar, one way to get different is remove Brown, put in Watkins, and you're different.
Yeah, and that is reasonable. I do personally. I prefer Brown, and then also, like I said, if I'm trying to get some spots where I'm contrarian, so getting Brown at the superstar spot is one way to reasonably do that. Now, in terms of the receivers over on the Raiders side, I have some interest in Henry Ruggs. I have some interest in Bryan Edwards, Hunter Renfrow, but none of these guys are players that I want to have a massive amount of exposure to. It's just kind of guys that I'm mixing and matching into lineups.
That's the right way of looking at it. And, it's going to come down for me to just kind of where is the field going? I got to assume the field's going to be going more towards Ruggs and Edwards. Edwards, I would call the wide receiver 2 there behind Ruggs, but Hunter Renfrow, we've definitely seen some spike games out of him as well. I mean, it's surprising to see that he's had 3 games of, more than 12 and a half fantasy points over on Yahoo last season. So 3 out of 16 in that regard, nearly 20% of the time. And I got to assume he's going to be by far the lowest rostered out of the groupings. So I think going to him a little bit makes some sense. Henry Ruggs, would become the de facto guy, but you want to talk about his struggles. He only had 2 games of more than 15 himself. So it's not that big of a gap between him and Renfrow. I think Bryan Edwards definitely becomes the question mark. I don't know what to do with him right now. I would assume that just because of the way that the salaries work on this side, that people are going to be going more to Henry Ruggs because he's the highest priced guy that exists in that range. But getting down to this $10 range, I mean, seeing Renfrow and Edwards down there makes it a little bit easier to play them. Who do you kind of prefer out of that trio?
Let's see. I'm going to look at my lineups right now. I think I'm pretty even on them, though. And here's the other thing also is my preference for a pass catcher from the Raiders is Darren Waller by a pretty wide margin. And that's something also that kind of mutes the amount that I get to like a Henry Ruggs, Bryan Edwards, or Hunter Renfrow because of the upside and the overall athleticism of Ruggs. He is the receiver that's popping up the most in my lineups, but it's a difference of I have 2 more lineups right now with Ruggs than Edwards. I have 10 more lineups with Ruggs than Renfrow. So overall, I'm pretty flat on these guys. I don't have a real lean in terms of points per dollar. I think my favorite play is Renfrow, but we just don't need the salary savings that much.
Exactly. And even like you describing it that way is kind of the reason that I think I might want to go to Renfrow a little bit more. Guy, it's a short ADOT. He's able to kind of get in the slot and make things happen very quickly there. Not going to be somebody who sets the world on fire. I mean, if somebody gets a bomb, it's probably going to be a bad night for you. And if you're doing what I'm doing and going to a little bit more Renfrow, just because I got to expect that Ruggs definitely going to be more of a deep threat, and Bryan Edwards surely more of a deep threat. But Hunter Renfrow, I think might be the guy just because of what you said there. I might go to him the most, and then kind of like work in reverse, get to a little bit more Bryan Edwards than Henry Ruggs as well.
And then any of these other wide receivers that really stand out to you? I mean, we saw, maybe not stand out is the right word, but anybody you think is worth taking a shot on. We saw last night for the Sunday night game, Van Jefferson was somebody who really broke the slate by being a not very popular, cheap wide receiver that ultimately ended up catching, was it a 75-yard touchdown pass from Matt Stafford? That was what really altered the course of that overall slate and finding value on it. Is there anybody that you see that's just not on the board for most people you think could potentially break the game in that kind of way?
So the guy that I think I would be taking the shots with would be Devin Duvernay. I don't want to go completely nuts, but there is some touchdown opportunity. The Raiders gave up they were tied for 9th most touchdowns through the air last season. There is going to be an opportunity. However, the guy only got 26 targets all of 2020. So, I mean, you're basically looking for lightning in a bottle for the Duvernay side there. I really don't see a whole heck of a lot else that I would want to go to. And I think the number of times that you're going to be going that, if you can target the Duvernay hit and he somehow outperforms the other ones, that'd be one thing. But considering it's basically a pick 'em down here, I don't think we need to be getting that cute. I'm going to probably try to avoid a lot of overlap just by leaving a lot of salary on the table. And I won't need to click on him at $10.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, we haven't projected for, let's see, how many fantasy points do we have Devin Duvernay projected for right now? It is, we have Duvernay projected for 3.8 fantasy points. So, it's obviously that's not zero because we know how numbers work. 3.8 is a different number than zero, but Here's the biggest pro Duvernay argument I can make. If you were trying to go totally crazy or off the board with somebody who people are not going to be clicking on for minimum salary, he's the guy that makes the most sense in this game. I know we've got in YouTube chat, who brought up Antoine Murphy said that he thinks that Foster Moreau is going to be the guy. We have him projected for 0 fantasy points right now. And also, I mean, like, I don't think Duvernay is going to get ownership either. So I don't think people are going to be rostering him. And just relative to the price, if I had to take a chance on somebody, it's him. But that's just relative to the other options. It's certainly not a vote of confidence.
Willie Snead revenge game. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what he's getting revenge for. Willie Snead.
Damn you for giving me a job. Dang it, you, Baltimore. How could you?
Yeah, and we all know that the only reason Willie Snead is in the NFL is because his forefathers were Willie Snead the fourth. The first three all played in the NFL also, or else this guy wouldn't even be in the league. We have him projected for 0.91 fantasy points.
He's a historical figure in these NFL streets.
Yeah, we all know that his grandfather was on the $2 bill. He had the white wig, and he invented football. So that's why Willie Snead the fourth. That's how he got in. But wide receivers.
It went on way too long.
Wide receivers, anyway. It's hard to really find somebody like a Van Jefferson from last night, who I thought there was legitimate reason to think he had upside. There's nobody here that I really view in the same way. And then, moving over to the tight end position, this is where I think a lot of the targets are going to go for these quarterbacks. And, Lamar Jackson does not throw the ball a ton. When he does throw the ball, it generally goes to either Mark Andrews or it goes to Hollywood Brown. This year, they also have Sammy Watkins in the mix, so that's probably going to change the dynamic a little bit. But between Mark Andrews and Darren Waller, which of these two tight ends do you prefer?
I mean, I prefer Darren Waller. If we're just going to throw out rostership, if we're going to say all other things being equal, I mean, Darren Waller is a massive beast. I mean, that's just kind of what it is. And I know there were people who had said coming into last year that there were touchdown concerns for him. Oh, and he only had 3 touchdowns. He's only had 5 touchdowns through 4 years. Well, the guy put up 9 last year, kind of put that to bed. He's continued to get more and more peppered targets going his direction. 6.7 receptions per game last season. In terms of receiving yards per game, just around 75. I mean, there's nothing you can say. I mean, he's the number 2 tight end in the NFL, and I don't think there's really a question about that. So I'm not going to say him versus Mark Andrews. I am going to even make a case for Mark Andrews. What I will say, though, is that I do expect the absence of some of this running game to kind of directly affect Mark Andrews if it affects anybody else. So yards per attempt throughout last season, 19th, Lamar Jackson. So, I mean, it was just kind of a short ADOT that he had on the entire season. He was, in the back third of all NFL quarterbacks that qualified for that metric. And we're going to see probably Mark Andrews be more of the direct beneficiary. I thought he was going to have a decent enough season last year once they got Hayden Hurst out of town, moved him to Atlanta, and it still didn't come to fruition. They have a bunch of interesting formations, and Baltimore is obviously always going to be focused on the run. But all of that considered, Mark Andrews, I think, is going to have a little bit better season as a result of no Dobbins, as a result of no Gus Edwards.
Yeah, so one other thing I'm going to add is even though I find that the pricing isn't that much of an issue for this slate, the one spot where I do find it is if I'm going to prioritize the quarterbacks, it is a little hard to jam Darren Waller into lineups with Derek Carr and Lamar Jackson. So with that in mind, I do find it easier to get to Mark Andrews at $21 than it is to get to Darren Waller at $28. So I'm going to have to tinker around with this a little bit because I want to get to more of Darren Waller than I currently have in my build. But he's somebody who is the one guy that's kind of becoming cost prohibitive for me. Is the $28 an issue for you at all?
I mean, it's an issue if you're prioritizing Derek Carr more so than Lamar Jackson. Or for me, it just becomes Jackson. I'm expecting in this spot. There are a number of times that he outperforms Derek Carr by a landslide as well. I don't know how to necessarily factor that in. I mean, our projections are the best in the industry. I'm sure when I start crunching lineups, when I start looking into a little bit more of, I can bump up Waller and get a little bit more if that direction. I would rather go to, considering he's $3 more than Derek Carr, that does become a little bit of a cost prohibitive issue. In the event, though, that you can go Waller and Carr, you can still get that $10 number, and then you put one Tyson Williams, and you still have $12 left over. So that is where it starts to get a little fascinating to me is, who that $10 guy is going to be alongside those type of builds. But yeah, $28 does become a little bit of a cost prohibitive issue for me. As I said, your question was, which one do I prefer? I prefer Darren Waller, but the right answer for me is I'm just going to play a ton of Mark Andrews in this spot. $21 gives me the pass catcher that I really want on the other side. I don't want to go too crazy with Marquise Brown. I don't want to go too crazy with Sammy Watkins, even though, that's going to be somebody I'm going to try to get to just to be different. I just think Mark Andrews is the guy who's going to be the direct beneficiary. If they are going to get success through the air, it's probably going to go through him.
Yeah, I mean, he's the de facto number one receiver for them, even though he isn't a receiver. He's basically a tight end that runs routes like a wide receiver. And we saw Darren Waller put up some massive fantasy games last year. He was one of the overall top fantasy performers in the league relative to position. It's just that the price is becoming a little bit of an issue for me. And I'll ask this then: if you're going to be having Lamar Jackson, basically all of your lineups, and Derek Carr, we agree, is also a really good option. Would you be willing to play Darren Waller in lineups that do not have Derek Carr?
Yes, I would absolutely play him in lineups that don't have him, just in the event that Derek Carr doesn't get the touchdowns. I mean, for me, those builds would look like Darren Waller. Hopefully we don't have to worry about, like, if Josh Jacobs is sitting, that becomes such an easy plug and play for Kenyon Drake to be the $15 guy. Then you're left with, I'm just sitting here building as we go, $14 left over. You could play Ruggs. You could play, we didn't even talk about, any of these other guys on the bottom end. I don't want to play Ricard. I don't want to play Duvernay. The Tyson Williams $10 is going to be the most popular. You could try to make Willie Snead a thing. I think that there are some paths to go to Waller where he's just getting peppered with targets. There were so many games last year as I'm going through the box score. Even in his last 5, 13, 7, 9, 5, 9 receptions, in terms of targets, he got targeted 4 of his last 5, 10 targets. So there are a number of ways Darren Waller can get there. He just would probably have to not get in the box at some point. He's probably going to have to not give Derek Carr the benefit of the doubt there. And, Darren Waller gets 9 catches, no touchdown. You're probably looking at him being optimal and Derek Carr not.
And then as for the defenses, I don't really have any real significant interest here. They're on the slate for the Yahoo single game slate, so I wanted to bring it up. But do you feel any differently about the defenses here?
No, it's 2 defenses that are okay, probably a little bit better than what people expect them to be. And this total sits around 50, so a little bit higher than normal. It's dropped a point since open. It opened at 51. I don't think there's anything that I can really say here. For me, defense in Showdown always comes down to, if the field is really heavy on the defense, I generally go lighter. And if they're going to be completely unowned, and, right now, right around 10, 15% rostership, it looks like, for each one of them around the industry for other sites. And for Yahoo specifically, it's going to be right around that same exact number. I got to probably be a little bit higher on them. I'm willing to take some shots in the event that, there's the pick 6. There's just a number of ways that things can just freakishly happen. I don't want to go crazy with it, but considering, the Raiders specifically are a $10 play, I think in lineups where you don't superstar Lamar Jackson, they become an intriguing pivot.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be very high on them, mostly because I'm not really getting to know my builds, but we'll see as we go along. I just don't know that there's that much significant upside. But if you guys do want to play on these contests today, if you're new to Yahoo, click on the video in this. Can people see? Below, it's below us. Click. There's a link there. If you're new to Yahoo, click on the link. It's going to be in the comments in the description below. That'll direct you over to Yahoo. If you make your first deposit there, you'll get 2 months of Awesemo Plus Platinum for free. We have all tools over for Yahoo that'll help you build your lineups, win some money over on Yahoo. But other than that, guys, good luck today and have a good night.